This is a cool environment.
I'd say people love you.
No, it's very nice. This is like what I picture, like Google feels like. Young people sitting in chairs in an open, lofty area like this.
Drinking water.
Brandless bottles of water. It's nice.
So, Mindy, I have to open by asking you a really hard-hitting, tough, personal, deep, probing question.
Great.
Since I have lady crushes on you and Amy Schumer, who would win in a bar fight, you or Amy?
Who would win in a bar fight between me and Amy Schumer?
Yes.
Amy Schumer, obviously, yeah. I really admire Amy Schumer, but I feel like she would kick my ass. I've been to like 2 bars in my life. I wouldn't even know where to show up. But she's so funny. I think she's hilarious, and she has like a little toughness about her, which I think she would, annihilate me in a bar fight.
She would probably kill me too, so yeah. And when we were speaking earlier, you said that your writing staff is in town with you. Yeah. Take me through the process of writing an episode of your show. How does that? I know to you it's probably like, but like, do you guys sit down and outline everything? How does it work?
Yeah, it's the least glamorous thing in the world. Many of you guys are writers, so you know the hell of sitting in front of your computer. But the way we do it is we have this time before we start shooting the show where it's just me and my staff of 8 writers, and we just come up with ideas for the characters. And once we latch onto an idea that we like, the premiere, all we had at the beginning was like, wouldn't it be funny if Adam Pally's character came into Chris Messina's office, since our characters are dating now, and said, hey man, Mindy told me that you're really good with your mouth. Because to me, it just seems like now that they're dating, it would seem like we would want to explore what it'd be like for them to have a relationship at work since Danny's so private. And we're like, well, that's a way to hit it right head on. And so we took that idea, that line, and we just wrote an episode about like what the problems would be with them dating. And then what we'll do is we kind of break the story, which is we talk about all the twists and turns and the act breaks, where the commercials would go, and we card it up on a board, which we have not updated even with technology. We just take index cards and write it all up on a board, and then we assign it to a writer like Jeremy Bronson or me or Tracy Wigfield, Lang Fisher, and then they take it home with them and write an outline, and they come back, I give them notes, they go out for 3 or 4 days, write a script, and come back, and then me and my showrunner, Matt Warburton, will sit in front of a computer with it up there with the whole staff, and we just go through it, punching jokes, and punching just means like giving alternative jokes and making it funnier. So.
Do you instinctively already know when something works or doesn't work?
That's one of the nice things about having a staff of writers is that I have an idea of what works when it worked at The Office, which was a mock documentary where people, broke the fourth wall and talked to camera. And I'm often surprised by what works, by what my writers come up with. And they came from The Simpsons and 30 Rock, so they brought a whole other wealth of expertise. And I am surprised often. I'm always surprised at how funny physical comedy is. How you could sit trying to craft a joke for whatever amount of time, but if I just fall out of frame because I slipped on something, that is like 20 times funnier than like a really witty joke. So I'm delighted by that.
Is there a dream guest that you want on the show?
So many. Idris Elba, I love.
He's so ugly. Why would you love him?
I don't think about his looks. I'm kind of like past looks with him. Yeah, he's smoking hot. We always have because my staff is like really nerdy, so we have people that like Matt Warburton would be like, if Zadie Smith could be on the show, that would be amazing. So like we have like writers that we really like, sometimes scientists and things like that. Yeah, I think Idris would be great. Reese Witherspoon we love. Jessica Chastain I just interviewed for something, and she's so funny. She is. And she's beautiful, obviously. So And
she likes Howard Stern's World's Dumbest Strippers.
Does she really?
Yeah, she does.
Oh, yeah, Howard Stern. He's amazing. Right? Sam Rockwell, I think he's constantly working. He's so amazing, but he's so funny. Such a good dancer. So those are some of the people I'd love to have on the show.
What, as you were coming up in comedy, what was the best and worst advice you ever got?
The best advice I ever got is probably from Greg Daniels, and he's given me tons of good advice, but one piece of advice he gave me, which seems very simple but is very hard to follow all the time, is be kind, which is if you're in a room with kind of a bunch of like sardonic, East Coast educated, like kind of impatient writers, it's very hard to show kindness. And I think that especially graduating from comedy writer to running a show where you're like, I'm a manager, like I can be sued for like human resources issues. Like that's not something that I came into this doing. Like it's like being kind to people and listening to people tell you about their families and their lives. It's like, I think that was a very useful piece of advice. The worst advice is that I've gotten, I don't know, like I've gotten pretty bad advice about needing to be skinny to be on TV. That's something that my first agent told me, that I should go on a juice cleanse. This is like 2004, before when juice cleanses were like still like for like you very dicey. Now everyone's on a juice. 90% of the people here are on a juice cleanse, so it's not weird now. But like but that was a thing when I was like, I feeling like I could only be on television if I was very thin. So
And
she's not my agent anymore.
I hope you fired her immediately. I mean, really.
Not immediately, but eventually, yes.
So much is written and talked about comedy being a boys' club. What's been your experience, especially as you've been running your own show?
You know, it's because I get asked these questions a lot, and they're very worthy questions, because I know a lot of people, especially women, want to hear what my experience has been. I always feel wary because I've had my experience is going to be so different than what so many other people's experience has been. I was lucky because I got hired by total feminist Greg Daniels to work on a show, The Office, where you could look like a regular person and be on the show and be considered funny and be considered watchable. But I know that that's not the experience of many, many people on many shows. So for Boys Club, I mean, I worked with Paul Lieberstein, Mike Schur, and Greg Daniels and BJ Novak, who would all identify as feminists, which is in itself like kind of a rare thing. And so in that very like small community that we had there, and I was there for so many years, at the office for 8 years, and the cast was all that way, I did not feel that at all. And then on my show, certainly all the men that I have on my show and the women, kind of we all identify in the sort of the same way. And I've noticed even in my time here, it's like all my favorite shows have female leads. So Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Veep, which is so brilliant, Lena and Girls, Tina, obviously. And so and all my favorite people on SNL are women also, like 80's So Hilarious, and Kate, obviously. So that could just be my taste. I could just like other things that are people who are like-minded to me, but I think I have not seen that.
If you could have dinner with any comedian, living or dead, who would it be?
Any comedian, living or dead? I think that Mike Nichols and Elaine May, when they were still doing like Broadway two-people plays, would be amazing. Actually, Mike Nichols and Elaine May now, like that would be amazing too. But I think those two are pretty cool. I always thought, like, are they dating? Are they just like friends? Like, what are they doing? I was very fascinated by their thing. And I like that they were very much equals. And she was so stylish. No one really, I don't think talks that much about how like stylish and chic Elaine May was and is, but I've always been very fascinated by her.
Or like Elaine Stritch, how awesome she looked in her heyday. Like
Oh,
that
yeah,
was, yeah.
I mean, yeah. I heard she's a little terrifying, though. She was a little terrifying, very formidable. I don't know if she would have liked me, but she was pretty cool.
And what were your favorite female-led comedies from the past, I guess, 4 decades, 5 decades?
It's such a great question. You know who I think people forget as a comedy actress and a comedy force, but I think is so hilarious is Emma Thompson was hugely inspiring to me. Sense and Sensibility is not that funny of a movie, but it's an incredible movie. And it was incredible to me that you are all way too young to remember this, but she won 2 Oscars in 1 year, lead actress and screenwriter for adapting Sense and Sensibility. And I remember as a kid being like, you have like moments in people where you see something and you're like, I had to like look up what that meant to like adapt a screenplay. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so she came up on her own comedy show. She was like 24 and had her own comedy show in England. And I think she's super funny. Elaine May, as I said. Tina Fey to me is so funny because, and I looked at her especially because I feel like you have some people like Amy Poehler and Julia and Kristen where like they disappear into these characters and it's so amazing, and it's like a miracle when you watch it. And then you see someone like Tina, who I kind of compare to like Tom Hanks in many ways, because you're like, it's not like she changes her character so much from role to role, but like there's just something about that thing that you're like, I don't care, I just like that thing. And to me, I'm like, you always narcissistically think like, what's more me if there's a path and what I could do. And I'm like, I'll never be this like groundlings person who's like doing accents and doing like, like all these like, and this is my 12 characters that I can rattle off. And I was like, I like this other thing, maybe because I more identify with it. So yeah, Tina is amazing.
What was the moment when you first realized you wanted to do this?
Well, with acting, I think probably everyone in this room, whether you're an actor or not, has had a moment when they're like, I want to do that, because like who wouldn't want to be an actor, right? Like,
but in terms of like when you really were like, this could be my life's path.
But for writer, actor, I think that I, as a little kid, I had very, very protective parents who would not let me out a lot to do a lot of stuff. They didn't do any sports. I was not good at instruments. We never really traveled or anything. I was just like told to study. Both my parents worked, study and read books. And so I think that so much of my childhood was sitting. My mom was a doctor, and she'd have her office where she would see patients and talk to them, and then like an exam room, and then there was an extra room that was for storage and for phlebotomy, which is like drawing bloods. So, because my mom didn't want to leave me with like a nanny after school, I would take the bus to her office, go to this last room, and then I'd sit there with a typewriter, and I'd either read or write. That was all I could do. And then if someone had to come in and get their bloods taken, I would just get shuffled out. And then a pregnant woman would just be sitting there getting her bloods drawn, and then like I'd kind of wait impatiently, and then she'd leave, and then I'd come back in and start writing again. So to the point where like they would read what I was writing, and I would write these stories. And I think that feeling of like waiting for this pregnant woman to leave so I could finish writing my like little weird plays that I would write is when I was like, oh, I love doing this, like, and I can do it without anybody else to entertain me. So that's probably like I was like 7 or 8.
And what was your
typewriter? Nobody knows what a typewriter is. This group is too young. They're all like Googling it.
Or a word processor.
And there's like
Remember the word processor?
There's like an ancient image of like this Mark Twain typewriter. I'm 1,000 years old. Like I.
Do you remember fax machines?
Oh yeah, I love fax machines. That was like, there's certain times you get technology, and when you go from like a computer to an iPad, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But when you went from nothing to a fax machine, that was like a huge jump. Don't you think?
Like when someone said to you, can you send me your script, and you would fax it, you're like, that's concrete, and you got the confirmation page?
Oh yeah, and you was like, first of all, very theatrical sound it would make too. It took over your whole life, and then you'd get these pages. So one thing I wanted to impart to you what a fax machine was. That's why you guys all came here to talk to me about that. I think I'm being boring.
You're not boring.
Okay.
And plus, we can always talk about your shoes, which are amazing.
Thank you.
But we're not going to, because we're going to have a serious discussion about comedy.
Okay.
Who is your number one comedy role model?
Number one comedy role model? Mm-hmm. So probably Conan O'Brien, because he really affected me at a time when I was that like my most like that scary self that figures when you're like 12 and you're just trying to figure out like the thing where obsessions take over you the most. Like you like music the most, and everyone needs to know what your favorite SNL sketch is, and everyone needs to know what your favorite song is. And for me, probably Conan, when he came on with Late Night, I needed to watch every episode. I had to tape every episode, every interview, rewind it, watch it. Like that was, so that he really came on and affected me at a time when I was my most like. There's like that time when you're 12 where you just osmosis. You just want to like take it. You want to like become the person. So for me, it was probably him.
And he's also a nice guy, which you are too. And that's kind of, I don't want to say rare in this industry, but...
I'm sorry, he's a what?
He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy.
Just like you're a nice lady.
Oh, so, thank you. He's nice, and he's very intense, and he's a writer, performer. So for me, and he's also, Conan on Late Night was, and he still is, but like there was something about him, no one knew who he was, and then he got that show, and he was so virtuosic, like when he first hit the scene, it's like nothing I'd ever seen before. So I think probably Conan.
Do you have a blueprint for your career? Not a blueprint cleanse, but an actual blueprint.
Yeah, I've always been one of those weird kids where, like, when I would go to high school, I would, like, make lists of, like, all the things that I wanted to do, and then I kind of, like, check them off like a serial murderer. Like, did I do this and do this and do this? And when I went to college, I, like, assessed what I thought was, like, cool to accomplish, and then I, like, checked it off. Like, I've never been just, like, one, like, live for the moment and who cares what happened, like, c'est la vie. Like, I was never that. I was highly organized. And so I think when I was younger, this is one of the cooler things about my life, and I have to acknowledge it sometimes because when I, like, get mad at it being humid or whatever, that I am living my live stream. Like, the job I have now, I had a plan up until now, which was to get my own television show that I would create. And so I have to start thinking more unless I die. So I could die this week or something. Wouldn't that would be pretty dramatic and cool. But barring that, I have to make some more plans. So now I'm looking inward. I'm like, oh, I should maybe have kids, get married, maybe that sort of thing. I should do that now.
Or I was thinking, like, maybe, like, do you want to ever have your own late night show, a la Conan?
Thank you. I mean, that job it's so good. I feel like the connection that a late night talk show has with an audience, in, like, when you're lying in bed, is like the last person you hear before you go to sleep, or avoid having sex with your husband or whatever it is. Like, that's, like, such a powerful bond. And I feel like that type of thing is like, it also takes such a, I think it could be a little mind numbing. Also, you have to, like, muster up energy to be like, tell me more about your vampire show, you 22-year-old actress. I'm interested. Do you know, like, I don't know that I could do that, like, every day. So I think it seems like a cool challenge.
And last question before we turn it over to you guys. Given everything that's been in the news this week, Mindy, do you have a sex tape?
I was just saying this. When those, like, sex photos came out, I was titillated. I didn't look, even though I wanted to. Because I have two feelings about it, which is, like, it's horrible, it's a felony, I hate it. But then I was also like, why did no one take any of my sexy photos off of my phone? Because I have just so many of them. So, and like I said, my password on my phone is like 1234. I leave it in the back of subways but no, nothing. Next time.
Next time. All right. I'm sure you guys have questions.
Hi.
Hey.
First of all, I just wanted to say that this is so cool and just thank you.
Oh my gosh.
I had just recovered from major surgery, and whenever I was feeling down, I would always go onto iTunes or something, and I would always watch an episode of Mindy or something like that.
Oh my God.
And it always made me and my entire family just laugh and forget about just all the horrible stuff going on.
Oh my gosh, that's such an amazing thing to have said to me. You're so adorable. I'd like to take you from your family and make you part of my family.
I'll come.
And then you can move in with me. I'm staying in Soho. It's pretty cool. Your family seems cool, but, like, this would be cooler, you and me. Kid and Mindy against the world. And then we can go on iTunes and you can buy the whole things of your family and be like, remember my family? That was fun too. That can cheer you up when you miss them.
Remember, you're a manager now, so you could do it.
Yeah. They can all move in with me. Family and Mindy.
And then my question was that when you first did Ben and Matt years ago, did you realize that it would open up all these amazing doors for you?
That happened before you were born, I believe. So I'm very impressed with this level of research. So I think what you're referring to is I did a play in New York City in 2001 called Matt and Ben, which was a fringe festival play that we did in, like, the Lower East Side, and then it got moved to PS 122, which is amazing theater space in the East Village, where a very absurd, strange play where I played Ben Affleck at age 23, and my best friend Brenda Withers played Matt Damon. We played them pre-fame, and I had no idea. I mean, I wore a tracksuit every day. We did our own makeup. We looked terrible. And no, I had no idea. And then I went from that job playing Ben Affleck to playing Kelly Kapoor on The Office, which was like almost like 180 degrees, like the most overtly feminine, annoying dum-dum of all time. So no, I didn't know. But I think at some level, and this always gets me in trouble when I say this, if you want to do what I want to do, most people have this feeling that you go from feeling like, oh yeah, I'm like the best actor that's ever existed, like, and then being like, oh, I'm a fraud. So there was a part of me, like, and it's just keeping those both in check. So I think at that time I was like, I think there is something here if people are watching this, but I didn't imagine exactly how it would pan out.
And I was just wondering if you would please just sign the picture that I had brought.
Oh my God, of course. Although I can sign it at our house afterwards when you come live with me, when I make you dinner tonight. Yes, of course I would. I would love to. Do you want me to do it now?
Whenever it's good for you.
Okay. All right. Yes, we'll make sure we do it. Maybe I'll do it right after. Yes. Okay, great. Cool. You're adorable. I want this interaction to never end.
So I run Cambio, the brand that's co-sponsoring this today, and
Thank you
one
for
of
having
my favorite quotes of yours is, I think it was in Parade magazine last year. You said, people are always asking you, where do you get your confidence? And that it's actually kind of insulting, because it's like, well, why shouldn't you be confident? Like, do I have all the trappings of a marginalized person? And I very personally empathize with that, and we think a lot about that at Cambio. We want to empower girls, and so we started this movement called Built by Girls. And so as a creator, we sort of think like, you can create anything. You can create something with code, or you can be an actor or a comedian. So what advice would you give to young women who want to be creators or builders or of something, but are maybe lacking in a little bit of confidence? Like, what would you say to them?
God, the confidence question is, I feel like it's such a good question, but it's also, I was always born with this delusional feeling that I could do anything, because even if that was instilled in me and my parents. And if you're not lucky enough to have parents who give you outsized confidence as a kid, God, because girls face so many challenges, and people are constantly telling them they can't do things, they can't be funny, they can't run companies. My advice is always just like, not to focus on anyone telling you can't do anything, or the politics of your situation, but to just focus on the situation. It's sort of to think of yourself as not a woman, not a minority, not skinny, not whatever. Just think about like your art or the thing you want to do, because you can get caught up. I can get caught up. I could spend my entire life doing panels on being a chubby woman of color writing a TV show. And it would be useful to some people, but then I wouldn't be writing my TV show. And all my competition, all the white men who are doing the same thing as me, are not doing those panels. They're just getting better and better and better at their job. And so for me, the only advice I ever give women is like, we want to support each other without distracting each other. And it's just like, heads down, work really hard, pretend your parents don't they lock you in the third room of whatever, and just like do your work. So it's not fun advice. It's not like look in the mirror and just say like RESPECT and like walk down the street. But that was not my experience. I hope that was a useful answer.
No, and you're so right, because Letterman never gets asked that question, or Adam Sandler, or Jimmy Fallon. They just do what they do.
They just do what they do, yeah. It's nice. I think it's, in 10 years, maybe we won't be asked those questions, I think. Do you want to answer? Should I pick people?
Hi, I'm Liz, huge
Okay,
fan. If you and Kelly Ripa get drinks tonight, can I come?
Yeah, Kelly and I were like really hitting it off.
You really have a
I had
thing.
this fantasy that me and Jessica Seinfeld will like be in the Hamptons by the end of this
She's
weekend.
had a big summer, right?
I follow them
On
both on
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. So they're like, I still feel like a creep following people on Instagram, even though it's like a display of their life.
Well,
But
I
do
literally work for Instagram, so we should chat after that.
Oh wow!
Okay.
How coincidental. Cool.
Okay, so I love the writing on your show. It's awesome. And you obviously live in LA now. but you write about New York so well. How do you pull that off? Like the scene where you're like, oh my God, my apartment's so messy, but you actually were robbed, you know?
Oh.
Like, and just all the
Yes,
little,
yes.
I felt that.
Yes.
And just like all the little sort of things, like the street meat guy, like all that kind of stuff. How do you keep it so New Yorky? Because it's really, really well done.
Well, thank you. When I lived in New York, I had like no money at all, and I lived in deep Brooklyn, so I don't have this like amazing West Village apartment or Tribeca apartment like Chris Messina's character do. But we have a ton of I have a couple 30 Rock writers on my show, and almost all of my staff lived in New York at some point. My friend Jeremy Bronson, who's one of the writers on my show, worked at Fallon, and to me, he is, because like Jimmy Fallon's like the writing culture on that show was like everyone was like really cool, and like Jimmy's so cool, so part of why I hired him is that he's like a stylish New York guy. So we'll be like, anyway, so everyone went to Momofuku for dinner, and he's like, that was like 2007, what are you saying? And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, that's social suicide now. No, Momofuku's amazing, David Chang's amazing, but it's like, no, Mapesh is where we go now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mapesh, okay, cool, all right. So he keeps everything updated for me in the New York stuff.
It's actually Gatto now. So
What is it?
Gatto, the Bobby Flay restaurant that no one can get a reservation
I'm
at.
like, I'm so
Just
embarrassed.
letting you know.
I'm this like rube who's like, everyone, let's go to the Spotted Pig. And everyone's like,
Let's go get a Cosmo.
let's go get a Cosmo. Spotted Pig is also amazing.
Yes,
I was
it
there
is
like
actually,
last
totally
time I
is.
was here. I don't want to be dissing these great restaurants.
No, they're awesome. Yeah.
I have a question. In your book, you talk about how you would go to Barnes and Nobles and like copy notes out of like different screenplay books and stuff. Is there a book that you would recommend to like aspiring writers? I've always wondered what book was it that Mindy Kaling was reading.
You know what the one thing I'm really jealous of you young people for now is that when I was growing up, you liked a script and the only thing you could do is watch it and write down the lines. And so now you don't have to do that as much. But to me, I have like the Collected Faulty Towers is what I was reading for just like format and things like that. I loved how the episodes laid out, and I got that. I have like the Collected Freaks and Geeks, which is a show that even though it was technically a drama, like I loved, and I get really inspired by Judd's writing and Paul Feig's writing and stuff. So and the screenplays, even though I have never written a movie, like I think I have a bunch of screenplays like from The Princess Bride to Hannah and Her Sisters. So I just like scripts. My house is just full of scripts. Only one more? Oh man.
Yippee. I just had a quick question. I wanted to know kind of your thoughts on Joan Rivers, like being this huge influence on women in comedy, and how do you think that her death will kind of shape like where women in comedy moves going forward?
And Joan was so incredible for so many reasons, and I never knew her. I just knew obviously of her body of work, but there's two things that I loved about Joan Rivers. One was that she was completely fearless and she didn't care about being likable. And she made fun of me on several occasions on her show for outfits of mine that she detested, but she was totally fine with taking an insult. And if I can say, for one thing, especially as a woman, being able to, we talk about things like boys clubs, and it's like letting your sensitivities drop. Like, we can't be offended if people call our clothes ugly. We can't be offended if people say that they think we're fat and ugly, because those are things that should not be important to us. And they're only going to seem important to us so long as we get wounded by them. And so she was both someone who dished a lot, but also taught you like, hey, don't take it personally. Yeah. And so that was very useful. I also think she died working, and that's what I want to do. I saw her documentary, and she had a lot of people to support. And if I could choose the way to go, it would be like 1 week off of her TV show, and she was, and I don't know, I don't know what it would be like to retire and not do what I'm doing. So I thought that was pretty like baller that she was just like working.
I interviewed her 2 years ago, and she said, we ended up talking about her husband's suicide, and she said, imagine what her life was like when she came home, found him dead, had no money, was blocked from Johnny Carson blocked her from his show, and she's like, there were no female comedians getting work, none, and she had a kid to support, and she did it, and I think that's amazing. Like, she never backed down. So Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Mindy.
thank you guys. This is so much fun. Thank you.